Dan Scott, barely a week ago, I heard you rail for 2 hours about independence.
And?
Mr. Hardwick, how many times have I heard you speak of freedom at my father's table? Half the men in this church, including you, Father, and you, Reverend, are as ardent patriots as I. Will you now, when you are needed most, stop at only words? Is that the sort of men you are? I ask only that you act upon the beliefs of which you have so strongly spoken and in which you so strongly believe.
Who's with us?
First, a disclaimer. I will not be wearing a wig like that in the future. Nor is it in my plan to grow a ponytail. However, if somebody wants to build one of those big, tall Bema things right in the middle of the room, where I can just stand up there and look down, and I'll be, no. So let me ask you this. After seeing that, what does the phrase, "you have stayed long enough at this mountain," mean to you? The Hebrew has a certain connotation to it, of course. Of course, I'm going to bring out the Hebrew. So, it's the difference between a hotel and home. How many of you have ever stayed in a hotel? How many of you have, when asked about your stay, said, "Well, I lived in the hotel for a night"? How many of you ever said that? You've lived for one night? If you're there for a night? Okay, different story, but proves the point. Okay? You don't generally say, at least I know that Kim and I have spent more than our fair share of nights in hotels. And we have never, ever said we were living in the hotel for the night. Most people use the word stay. We stayed in a hotel for a night or two. When we were out in California for a month, different story. Okay? If you're staying in a hotel for business or for whatever, I know you, Brian, Jeff, you probably have before too. You probably say, yes, we've lived there. But that's the difference. When you say stay, it's temporary. Which is interesting because you don't usually think stay being temporary. Stay you think as being permanent. But it's really a very temporary thing. The word live has a different underlying meaning. When you live somewhere, it's permanent. It implies, all right, I'm going to be here for a month. I'm going to be here for 4 months. I'm going to be here for 8 months. I can unpack. I don't have to live from a suitcase. I can get comfortable. I can spread my stuff around. I can make myself feel like I'm at home. I'm going to be here for a while. In the two different words, there's different mindsets. If you stay somewhere for a night, it's temporary. You're not comfortable. You're only going to be there for a short time. And so it really doesn't make that much of a difference. When you're living someplace, it's more permanent. It's long-term. You get comfortable. The picture that Anne paints in this clip from The Patriot, at least I think her name is Anne, it's an illustration of these two mindsets. Are we going to be, are we great at burrowing in? Like digging our heels in, hanging out for a while, getting comfortable? Is that where we are? Or are we okay getting up and moving every now and then? Are we okay getting up and doing stuff? That's the difference. The Hebrew used in our passage this morning speaks of this paradox. Just about all of the English versions, and if you want to take a look, this is Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 6. Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 6. All of the English versions that I looked at use one of three words in the translation. Okay, this is the passage about you have stayed long enough at this mountain. They all use either stayed, lived, or dwelt. And there are different connotations to each of these words, as we've noted. But what does it say in the Hebrew? The Hebrew says, Rav lachem shevet. Rav lachem shevet. Which, when literally translated, would sound like something Yoda would say. Long have you dwelt. That's literally what it means. Long have you dwelt. The word shevet is from the root yashav, which means to sit, to remain, or to dwell. In each case, though, there is a connotation of comfortability. You're sitting in the seat of Moses. Okay, you're comfortable there, yashav. Okay, you remained there for a while because it was just that much fun. It's comfortable to be there, so you remain. Or you dwell there. You dwell someplace for a while. You get comfortable. The children of Israel had gotten comfortable around the mountain. The children of Israel had gotten comfortable around the mountain. Anyone know how long they were there in total? Long time. How long? They were 40 years in the desert. 14 months. 14 months. They were camped out there at the base of the mountain. They had gotten comfortable. But God had something for them to do. It was a great place down there around the mountain. They had their needs taken care of. They weren't bored. They had plenty of work to do. They were building a tabernacle. So there was plenty for them to do. Plenty of pastures for the flocks. What more could they want? They built the tabernacle. They got comfortable. But God had something else for them to do. So there are two things we have to take note of here. Two things. First, while they were in their comfortable place, that is, while they were around the mountain, there was work to be done. Even in their comfortable place, there was work to be done. Everybody there in that camp was working, using the gifts and the talents that God had given them to build something great that would last for a really long time until they got to the land that was promised. And the second thing we have to note, that there was a task that God had for them beyond the boundaries of their camp, outside of their place of dwelling, outside of their comfort zone. So there was something to be done in-house. There was in-house work, internal stuff that had to be done, needed to be done. There was external stuff also needed to be done. They couldn't forsake either of them for what God had for them to do. So those two things we have to pay attention to. And as I was preparing for this morning, it had occurred to me that the description that I used just now about the children of Israel working together around the base of the mountain was actually very reminiscent of how I would describe the body in the book of Acts. Sure, there were probably a few people who didn't buy in. These were the folks who grumbled and complained and wanted to go back to Egypt and yada, yada, yada. They just weren't happy. But those were the exceptions rather than the rule. For the most part, they were working together, united in mind and purpose. And who was leading them in the work of the tabernacle? Who was leading them in the work of the tabernacle? Huh? Aaron. I got Moses. Anyone else? All right. How many of you think it was Aaron?